The room went silent when my mother pressed play. A video of me in a hotel room with a stranger flickered across the screen while my sister dabbed fake tears beside her. David deserves to know who he's marrying. Mother announced, her voice thick with rehearsed grief. My fiancé's face drained white. 20 guests stared. My hands trembled not from fear, but from realizing my own family had spent weeks planning this moment. They wanted David for my sister. They wanted me destroyed. But they forgot one thing: I had a video too. Have you ever watched your own mother try to ruin you? The stories on this channel are created solely for entertainment, educational, and storytelling purposes. While some stories are inspired by real situations submitted by viewers via email, most details have been fictionalized, combined, or altered. My name is Lauren Price. I'm 36 years old, a director of financial analysis at a firm I've been with for over a decade. I built my career from nothing, left home at 22 with 2 suitcases and a determination to never depend on my family again. Everything I have, I earned myself. But to my mother and sister, none of that matters. To them, I've always been invisible. Growing up in the Price household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy. My mother, Patricia, sat at the top, a woman who believed her children existed to serve her needs, validate her choices, and never question her authority. My younger sister, Jessica, was the golden child, the beautiful one, the daughter who received praise for breathing, while I received criticism for excellence. I stopped competing for my mother's approval years ago, not because I gave up, but because I finally understood the game was rigged from the start. Jessica is 33 now, gorgeous and charming on the surface, but drowning underneath. A failed marriage, $23,000 in credit card debt. A pattern of using people until they have nothing left to give, then discarding them like empty containers. Mother never sees any of this. Or perhaps she does and simply doesn't care. Then David came into my life. David Mitchell is an architect, successful and kind, with the rare ability to see people exactly as they are. He fell in love with me for the things my family dismisses: my independence, my quiet strength, my refusal to perform for approval. 6 months ago, after a particularly painful family dinner where my mother spent 2 hours praising Jessica's failed attempts at starting a business while ignoring my recent promotion, David said something that changed everything. "Your mother controls you more than you realize," he told me gently. "You deserve better than this." I didn't know Jessica was listening from the hallway. She reported every word to Mother within the hour. From that moment, David became the enemy. The man who might wake me up, who might finally break Patricia's hold on her invisible daughter. What made it worse was the Easter gathering 3 weeks later. Jessica, in a low-cut dress and her most dazzling smile, spent the entire afternoon trying to capture David's attention. She touched his arm while laughing at jokes he didn't make. She leaned close when refilling his wine glass. She found excuses to stand beside him in every photograph. David told me about it that night, his expression a mixture of discomfort and disbelief. "Your sister touched my arm 3 times. I moved away each time. I don't think she cared." Jessica's humiliation at his rejection transformed into something darker. I saw it in her eyes at every family event, after a cold hatred that had nothing to do with sisterhood and everything to do with wanting what I had. 3 weeks before my wedding, I noticed strange things happening. Jessica, who normally treated me with polite indifference, suddenly became friendly. She asked about my work schedule, my travel plans, whether I had any upcoming trips. Mother requested old photographs for a family album she claimed to be assembling. When Jessica borrowed my phone to check something quickly during a lunch visit, I later discovered apps had been opened that I hadn't touched in months. I mentioned the odd behavior to Maya, my best friend and a tech professional who has watched my family's dysfunction with horrified fascination for years. "You know people can create fake videos with AI now, right?" she said casually. "It's getting scary good. You can make anyone appear to do anything." I filed that information away, not yet understanding how relevant it would become. 1 week before my wedding, my mother called. Her voice dripped with sweetness, the tone she uses when she wants something. "I'm hosting a family dinner, sweetheart. There's something important I need to discuss with David." My stomach turned to ice. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew my mother well enough to be afraid. The night of the dinner arrived faster than I wanted it to. David picked me up at 6, looking handsome in a navy blazer, completely unaware that we were walking into an ambush. I had spent the entire week trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe Mother really did just want to celebrate. Maybe Jessica's strange friendliness was genuine. Maybe I had spent so many years expecting the worst from my family that I could no longer recognize when they were trying to be kind. I wanted to believe that. I truly did. But the knot in my stomach told a different story. Mother's house looked beautiful when we arrived. She had transformed the dining room into something out of a magazine. White candles flickering in silver holders. Fresh flowers arranged in crystal vases, her finest china laid out on pressed linen. Expensive wine had been opened to breathe. Soft music played from somewhere in the background. It was the kind of setting that whispered warmth and family love, and that alone should have confirmed my suspicions. Patricia Price did not create warmth without a purpose. She greeted us at the door with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Lauren, darling, you look tired. Have you been sleeping enough before the wedding?" It was classic Mother. A criticism wrapped in concern. She hugged David longer than necessary, patting his back like he was already family. "David, I'm so glad you could come. There's something important we need to discuss tonight." Jessica emerged from the kitchen wearing a dress that was slightly too formal for a family dinner, her makeup perfect, her hair cascading in careful waves. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, anticipation maybe, or hunger. Like a cat watching a mouse it was about to catch. "Lauren," she said sweetly, kissing my cheek. "I'm so happy you're here." David squeezed my hand as we sat down. I could tell he sensed something was off. He kept glancing between my mother and sister, his jaw tight, his shoulders tense. But he stayed polite, answering questions about his work, complimenting the meal, playing the role of the gracious future son-in-law. I barely touched my food. Every instinct I had was screaming that something terrible was about to happen. Midway through the main course, Mother set down her fork. The room seemed to shift, the air growing heavier. She dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, and when she looked up, her face was a portrait of maternal anguish. "I've been struggling with something," she began, her voice trembling. "As a mother, I have a responsibility to protect the people I love, even when the truth is painful, even when it breaks my heart to say it." David straightened in his chair. "Patricia, what's going on?" Mother rose from her seat and walked to the sideboard where she picked up a tablet I hadn't noticed before. Her hands shook as she carried it to the table. A nice touch, I thought distantly, that practiced tremor of grief. "David, I can't let you be deceived any longer. I hired someone to investigate because I was worried about certain things I'd noticed. And what they found..." She pressed her lips together, unable to continue. Jessica reached over and touched David's arm. "We're so sorry," she whispered. "We didn't want to believe it either." Mother turned the tablet toward us and pressed play. The video that appeared on the screen showed a hotel room. A woman sat on the edge of the bed talking to a man whose face was partially visible. The woman was laughing, leaning close, touching his shoulder in a way that suggested intimacy. The woman looked exactly like me. Same hair, same profile, same gestures. When she spoke, it was my voice. When she turned toward the camera, it was my face. Beside the video, text messages were displayed. Flirtatious exchanges, plans to meet, words I had never written to a man I had never seen. I stared at the screen, genuinely confused. For a long, terrible moment, I didn't understand what I was seeing. It looked so real. The lighting, the movements, the way she tilted her head when she laughed, it was exactly how I laugh. My mind went blank with shock. David watched the video in silence. When it ended, he didn't look at me. He looked at my mother. "Where did you get this?" he asked. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the strain beneath it. "A private investigator," Mother said, wiping her eyes. "I've had concerns for months. The late nights, the business trips, the secrecy. A mother knows when something is wrong with her child." "This is a lie," I heard myself say, but my voice sounded distant, disconnected from my body. Jessica shook her head sadly. "Lauren, please, don't make this worse by denying it. We've all seen the evidence." She turned to David, her eyes soft with sympathy. "You deserve so much better than this. You deserve someone who would never betray you." David finally looked at me. His expression shattered something inside my chest. Not anger, but confusion, pain, the beginning of doubt. "Can you explain this?" he asked quietly. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. The video was impossible. It couldn't exist. I had never been in that hotel room. Never met that man, never written those messages. But there it was playing on a screen in front of everyone I cared about, and it looked exactly like me. Then I noticed the timestamp in the corner of the video. Last Tuesday, 8:47 in the evening. Last Tuesday, I was in Chicago. The realization hit me like ice water. Last Tuesday, I flew out Monday morning for a client presentation. I didn't return until Wednesday night. I had the plane ticket on my phone, the receipt from my Chicago hotel, work emails with timestamps from meetings that ran until 7. I was 800 miles away when this video was supposedly recorded. Everything clicked into place. The questions about my schedule, Jessica asking about my travel plans, my phone being accessed when she borrowed it, the old photographs Mother requested for her album. They needed to know when I would be out of state so they could create a video placing me somewhere I couldn't have been. They needed my face, my voice, my mannerisms. They had been planning this for weeks. Maya's words echoed in my head. You know, people can create fake videos with AI now, right? It's getting scary good. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw the truth beneath the performance. The trembling hands were calculated. The tears were rehearsed. This wasn't a mother protecting her future son-in-law. This was a woman eliminating a threat, the man who told me I deserved better, the man who might finally free me from her control. And Jessica, sweet, sympathetic Jessica with her soft eyes and her comforting touches on David's arm. She wasn't grieving for a sister's betrayal. She was watching me lose everything, and she was enjoying it. Patricia must have noticed that I wasn't crumbling the way she expected. She shifted tactics immediately. David, I know this is difficult to accept, she said, her voice hardening slightly. But look at Lauren. She's not even crying. She's not even trying to defend herself. What kind of person reacts to something like this with such coldness? An innocent woman would be devastated. She would be fighting to explain. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, and set it down with absolute calm. The room held its breath. That video was supposedly recorded last Tuesday at 8:47 in the evening, I said quietly. I was in Chicago. I have the plane ticket, the hotel receipt, and work emails with timestamps proving I wasn't even in the state. I turned to look directly at my mother. So do you want to tell me where this video really came from? The silence that followed my question was deafening. Mother's face went through a rapid transformation shock, then calculation, then something that looked almost like fear. Jessica had stopped her sympathetic performance entirely, her eyes darting between me and the tablet on the table, as if she could somehow make the timestamp disappear through sheer willpower. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. My hands were steady, now steadier than they had been all evening. The confusion was gone, replaced by a cold clarity that felt almost peaceful. Let me show you something, I said, turning the screen toward David first, then toward my mother. This is my flight confirmation. I flew out of the city Monday morning at 6:15, Delta Airlines seat 12A. Here is the receipt from my hotel in Chicago, the Palmer House room, 417. I checked in Monday afternoon and checked out Wednesday morning. I swiped to another screen. And here are my work emails from last Tuesday. I was in a client presentation until 7 in the evening Chicago time. That's 8 o'clock here. After the meeting, I had dinner with my colleague Sarah Mitchell. I can give you her phone number right now if you'd like to call her. I didn't get back to my hotel room until almost 10. I looked at my mother steadily. So whoever made that video got the date wrong. They didn't realize I was 800 miles away when this supposedly happened. Patricia's face tightened. The tears had dried up remarkably fast. Jessica's confident smile had disappeared, completely replaced by something that looked like panic barely held in check. David leaned forward, looking at my phone screen, then at the tablet, then at my mother. I watched understanding dawn across his features, not just about the video, but about everything, about the kind of family I had been dealing with my entire life, about the kind of people who would create fake evidence to destroy their own daughter. I continued, my voice calm but cutting. You asked for old photos of me, Mother. You said it was for a family album. You asked about my travel schedule, when I would be out of town, where I would be staying. Jessica borrowed my phone 2 weeks ago and went through it. I checked the app history afterward. She opened my photo gallery, my calendar, my email. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the table. And now suddenly there's a video of me that's supposedly from a day I wasn't even in the state. A video that uses my face, my voice, my mannerisms. I looked between my mother and sister. You created this, both of you. The only question is how you did it and how long you've been planning it.
Right?
Patricia stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Her expression had shifted from calculated grief to righteous anger, another performance, another mask. How dare you, she said, her voice rising. How dare you sit at my table and accuse me of such things? Even if there are questions about the date, look at what you're doing right now, Lauren. Look at how you're behaving. You came here prepared to attack your own family. You had all of this ready to go. You were waiting for this moment. She turned to David, gesturing at me with barely contained fury. Is this the calculating, cold person you want to marry? Someone who investigates her own mother and sister. Someone who sits there with evidence prepared like a lawyer going to court. What kind of daughter does that? I waited. I had learned a long time ago that the best response to my mother's accusations was often silence. Let her words hang in the air. Let other people hear what she was really saying. David looked at Patricia for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. She came prepared, he said slowly. Patricia, she has a flight ticket and a hotel receipt. That's not preparation for an attack, that's just her life. Those are normal documents that anyone would have from a business trip. He shook his head. You're the one who presented fake evidence. You're the one who set up this dinner specifically to show that video. You're the one who hired someone to investigate your own daughter. He stood up from the table. And now you're trying to make her look crazy for defending herself. Patricia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For perhaps the first time in my life, I watched my mother have no response. Her backup plan had crumbled in less than 30 seconds. I took a breath. This next part was something I had hoped I wouldn't need to use. 3 days ago, I had received a message that changed everything I thought I knew about my sister. I had kept it to myself, hoping it would never become relevant. Hoping that somehow I was wrong about what my family was planning. 3 days ago, I said quietly, a woman named Brianna Collins contacted me through social media. She saw my wedding countdown post and felt she had to warn me about Jessica. The color drained from my sister's face so fast I thought she might faint. Brianna was Jessica's friend, I continued. 2 years ago, she lent Jessica $15,000 to help with credit card debt. Jessica promised to pay it back within 6 months. She never did. When Brianna asked for the money, Jessica cut her off completely, blocked her number, blocked her on social media, pretended she didn't exist. Jessica's hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. During our conversation, Brianna mentioned that she has a video. It was sent to her by a man named Kevin. Kevin was someone Jessica was seeing while she was still married to her first husband. When Jessica ended the affair and discarded him like she discards everyone, Kevin kept the video as insurance. I paused. Brianna has it now. She offered to send it to me. Jessica screamed. The sound was raw and desperate, nothing like her usual controlled sweetness. You're lying. That's not. You can't. That video doesn't. I held up my hand and she stopped, perhaps shocked by her own outburst. I'm not going to describe what's in that video, I said calmly. That's your private life, and unlike you, I don't believe in humiliating people in public. But if this family wants to continue accusing me of being unfaithful, I'm prepared to share that video with anyone who needs to see it. I looked at Jessica directly, including Marcus. The room went completely silent. Jessica was shaking visibly now, her perfect composure shattered beyond repair. Patricia stood frozen, her mouth still open, unable to process how completely her plan had fallen apart. David looked at both of them with an expression I can only describe as disgust. I turned to my mother. When I spoke again, the anger had drained out of my voice. What remained was something older and sadder, exhaustion maybe. The weariness of 36 years spent trying to understand why I was never enough. Mom, I need to understand something, I said quietly. I left home when I was 22. I paid my own way through everything. I never asked you for a single dollar. I stayed quiet, caused no problems, asked for nothing. I was the perfect invisible daughter. My voice cracked slightly despite my efforts to control it. What did I ever do to make you hate me this much? Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out, because there was no answer she could give that wouldn't expose everything: her need for control, her fear of losing her grip on me, her hatred of the man who was helping me see the truth. The silence stretched between us, heavy and final. And that silence said everything her words never could. I stood up from the table and picked up my phone and purse. I looked at David, who was watching me with something like awe. "You can take time to process this," I told him. "I won't beg you to believe me." Then I turned to my mother and sister one last time. Jessica was crying now. Real tears this time. The tears of someone watching their schemes collapse around them. Patricia simply stared at me, her face unreadable. "I'm not going to destroy Jessica with that video," I said. "But I'm also never speaking to either of you again. You're dead to me." I walked out the front door. I didn't look back. I drove straight to Maya's apartment and didn't leave for 3 days. I turned off my phone, crawled into her guest bed, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. Maya didn't push me to talk. She brought me tea and toast and sat with me while I stared at the ceiling, processing everything that had happened. On the second day, she asked if I had recorded anything during the dinner. I had. Without really thinking about it, I had pressed record on my phone when my mother stood up to make her announcement. Some instinct for self-preservation, I suppose. Maya took my phone and spent hours analyzing the video my mother had shown, comparing it frame by frame with the recording I had made of the tablet screen. Within 48 hours, she had her answer. "The video they showed has all the markers of AI generation," she told me quietly. "The metadata is wrong. The micro-expressions are slightly off in ways that are almost impossible to detect, unless you know what to look for. And there's a digital fingerprint that matches known AI video creation tools." I had proof now. Not just my alibi, but technical evidence that the video was fabricated. When I finally turned my phone back on, the messages came flooding in. My mother's texts followed a predictable pattern. First came the rage. "You humiliated this family in front of everyone. I will never forgive you for what you did tonight." Then came the manipulation. "After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me. I gave you everything and you throw it back in my face." Finally came the desperation. "Lauren, please. We need to talk, just the two of us. I can explain everything. You don't understand what really happened." I understood perfectly. That was the problem. Jessica sent nothing. I learned later that she was too busy watching her own life collapse to worry about me. The day after the dinner, Jessica went to work in a state of barely controlled panic. She made critical errors on 3 separate projects, snapped at her supervisor when he questioned her about a missed deadline, and spent most of the afternoon locked in the bathroom crying. Human Resources opened a review of her performance. During their investigation, they discovered something Jessica had been hiding for 2 years: financial irregularities totaling $8,000 embezzled through fake expense reports and fraudulent reimbursement claims. She had been stealing from the company to cover her mounting debts, confident that no one would ever look closely enough to notice. But her post-scandal behavior had drawn exactly the kind of attention she couldn't afford. The constant mistakes, the emotional outbursts, the inability to focus. It all raised red flags that led investigators straight to her financial records. She was terminated immediately and informed that the company was considering criminal charges for felony embezzlement. Meanwhile, Marcus heard about some kind of blow-up at the family dinner from a mutual acquaintance who had spoken to someone who knew someone. The details were vague, but the whispers were enough to make him suspicious. He asked Jessica what happened. She panicked, lied badly, contradicted herself within the same conversation. Marcus had already been questioning her secretive behavior and her constant financial problems. Now he did something he should have done months ago. He started asking around. Within a week, he had learned enough about Jessica's pattern of lies and manipulation to end the relationship. He didn't need to see any video. Her history of deception was enough. My mother's carefully constructed world began to crumble in ways she never anticipated. Word spread through her social circles, not about the video or the specific accusations, but about the dinner where Patricia accused her own daughter of something terrible, and it completely backfired. The Church Women's Committee, where my mother had held a leadership position for nearly a decade, quietly asked her to step down while things settled down. The community association election she had been campaigning for went to her opponent by a landslide. Her friends began avoiding her calls, making excuses about being busy whenever she tried to arrange lunch dates or coffee meetings. But the worst punishment came from inside her own house. Jessica, facing criminal charges and complete financial ruin, blamed my mother for everything. I heard about their fights from a neighbor who lived 2 houses down. The screaming was loud enough to hear from the street. "You pushed me into this," Jessica would shriek. "You said it would work. You said Lauren would just crumble and David would see her for who she really was. Now I've lost everything, and it's your fault. My mother had spent her entire life building control over her daughters. Now she controlled no one, not even the golden child she had chosen over me again and again. 2 weeks after the dinner, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. The return address was unfamiliar, but when I opened the envelope, my hands began to shake. It was from my father. Robert Price had been a ghost in my life for 15 years. Occasional birthday cards, brief holiday messages, nothing of substance. I had convinced myself he simply didn't care enough to try harder. The letter told a different story. When I divorced your mother, he wrote, she threatened to file for sole custody and a restraining order if I tried to stay in your life. She told me she would tell you I abandoned you, that I never wanted you. I was broken and afraid, and I made the wrong choice. I stepped back instead of fighting. I've regretted it every day since. He continued, I sent you letters for years, Lauren. Birthday cards, graduation, congratulations notes, just to say I was thinking of you. Your mother intercepted all of them. I only found out years later, when a mutual friend mentioned you'd never received anything from me. By then you were an adult, and I didn't know how to explain what had happened or why I had stayed away. The letter ended with words that broke something open inside me. I've watched you from a distance, Lauren. I've seen you become everything your mother tried to prevent, independent, strong kind. I'm so proud of you. I should have fought harder. I'm sorry I didn't. Enclosed was a check. Savings he had set aside for me since I turned 18, enough for a down payment on a small apartment. I sat on Maya's couch and cried for the first time since walking out of my mother's house. Not from sadness, from finally understanding why I had always felt like something was missing. After 2 weeks, I agreed to meet David at a quiet coffee shop. I was direct with him. I don't fully blame you for being confused, I said. That video was convincing, and my mother is a skilled manipulator. But I need to know, if someone accuses me of something again, what will you do? He didn't hesitate. I'll ask you first. I'll stand with you until there's actual evidence. I'll remember that your mother literally fabricated video evidence to destroy you, and I'll never underestimate what she's capable of again. I nodded slowly. I need 3 months apart. Not to punish you, to make sure I'm choosing you for the right reasons, not just because I'm used to you. And we're postponing the wedding indefinitely. David accepted without argument. 3 weeks after the dinner, Jessica received official notice that her former employer was pressing felony embezzlement charges. I consulted with a lawyer and decided to file a civil defamation lawsuit against both my mother and sister. Not for the money, for the record. I wanted a court document that officially stated what they did to me. The day I signed the lease on my own apartment, bought with my father's gift and my own savings, I stood in the empty living room and felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Losing a toxic family isn't a tragedy. It's the first step toward finally having a real one. 8 months have passed since that dinner, and I barely recognize my own life anymore. My apartment is small, just a 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, but every inch of it belongs to me. I decorated it exactly the way I wanted, without anyone telling me the colors were wrong or the furniture was too simple, or that I should have consulted someone with better taste. The walls are a soft sage green. The bookshelves are filled with novels I actually want to read. There are plants on every windowsill because I finally have time to care for them. It's not much by some standards, but it's mine, and that makes it everything. My career continued to advance during these months of rebuilding. I was promoted to Vice President of Financial Analysis, recognized at last for the steady competence I had always demonstrated, but never received credit for at home. My colleagues threw a small celebration when the announcement was made. Maya brought champagne. For the first time in my professional life, I felt seen by the people around me, not invisible, not overlooked, but genuinely valued for what I bring to the table. I've been rebuilding my relationship with my father, too. Robert and I meet twice a month now, sometimes for coffee at a quiet cafe near his apartment, sometimes for walks in the park when the weather is nice. It was awkward at first. 15 years of absence cannot be erased overnight, and there were moments when we sat in silence, neither of us knowing what to say. But slowly I'm learning who he really is. A quiet man who carries deep regret in his bones, who escaped my mother's control, but never stopped thinking about the daughter he left behind. He tells me stories about my childhood that I had forgotten the way I used to demand. He read the same bedtime story every night for a month. The afternoon, I tried to teach myself to ride a bicycle and refused his help until I finally succeeded. He remembers everything. He kept everything. And knowing that has begun to heal wounds I didn't even realize I was still carrying. The legal cases concluded within 6 months of that terrible dinner. Jessica, unable to afford adequate legal representation after losing her job, accepted a plea deal for the embezzlement charges. She received 3 years of probation, was ordered to pay full restitution of $8,000, and must complete 200 hours of community service. The felony conviction will follow her for the rest of her life, appearing on every background check, closing doors she doesn't even know exist yet. The civil defamation lawsuit I filed against both my mother and sister ended with a default judgment. They were unwilling to face me in court and unable to afford proper legal defense, so they simply failed to respond adequately to the proceedings. The judge awarded $50,000 in damages, with both defendants jointly liable. They cannot pay, of course, but the judgment is now public record. Anyone who searches their names will find it. I don't care about collecting the money. I never did. I care that the truth is documented forever, written in legal language that cannot be denied or rewritten or gaslit away. David and I reconciled after 5 months apart. It happened slowly, honestly, with a new understanding between us that hadn't existed before. During our separation, he proved himself in ways I hadn't expected. He sent weekly letters, not texts, but actual handwritten letters respecting my need for space, while making clear that he wasn't going anywhere. He completely severed any politeness toward my mother and sister, making it known to anyone who asked that he stood with me absolutely. When we finally came back together, it was as equals who had chosen each other with clear eyes. Our wedding was small. Maya stood beside me as maid of honor, crying before the ceremony even began. 15 close friends filled the seats, and my father walked me down the aisle with tears streaming down his face, his arms steady beneath mine, even as his voice shook. Patricia and Jessica were not invited. Not as revenge, I simply had no room in my joy for people who had tried to destroy it. When Robert took my arm at the back of the aisle, he whispered, "I should have been there for every milestone. I'm so sorry." I squeezed his hand and meant every word when I replied, "You're here now. That's what matters." My mother and sister are living together now, trapped in a house that has become their prison. Jessica, facing her probation requirements and unable to afford rent anywhere else, had no choice but to move back in with Patricia. From what I hear through distant connections, they argue constantly. Patricia blames Jessica for the failure of their scheme, for being careless with the money, for not making a more convincing video. Jessica fires back that it was Patricia's plan from the beginning, that Patricia promised Lauren would crumble, that none of this would have happened if Patricia hadn't pushed her into it. They scream at each other daily, sometimes falling into cold silences that last for days. Jessica completes her community service in a bright orange vest, picking up trash along the highway where anyone might see her. Someone from her old company drove past and recognized her. Within days, everyone in their professional circle knew exactly what had become of Jessica Price. Patricia, facing the civil judgment, had to sell her jewelry collection to cover legal fees. The same collection she used to show off at every church gathering, every community event, every moment she wanted to remind people of her status. The women who once admired her now whisper about the mother who framed her own daughter. They destroyed their relationship with me, trying to control me. Now they're trapped together, controlling no one but each other. 1 month before my wedding, Patricia called from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. There was no apology, only justification. "I did what I did because I was afraid," she said. "You were pulling away. David was turning you against your own family. I was trying to protect what we had." I listened until she finished, then responded calmly. "You weren't afraid I'd leave Mom. You were afraid you couldn't control me anymore. Those are 2 very different things. And for the record, Dad didn't abandon me. He escaped. He tried to stay in my life and you blocked him. You destroyed every letter he ever sent me. You let me believe for 15 years that my father didn't care about me. That's not protection. That's cruelty." The silence on the other end was absolute. "I'm getting married next month," I continued. "You're not invited. Neither is Jessica. I don't hate you. I just don't have room in my life for people who tried to destroy me. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. It was the last time we ever spoke. This morning, I stand at my apartment window, watching the sun rise on my wedding day. David is adjusting his tie in the mirror, nervous and happy. Maya is downstairs, probably already crying. My father will arrive in an hour to walk me down the aisle. I think about my mother and sister drowning in blame and resentment. I feel nothing. They no longer take up space in my heart. I look at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back knows her own worth. She chose truth over peace. She chose dignity over belonging. She chose herself. And that is the only victory that ever really mattered. Lauren's story teaches us something every woman over 50 already knows. Deep in her heart, blood does not equal loyalty, and family does not always mean safety. Sometimes the people who share our DNA are the ones who hurt us most deeply, while strangers become the angels who save us when we need it most. If you recognize yourself in Lauren's journey, if you have ever been the invisible daughter, the scapegoat, the one who gave everything and received nothing but criticism in return, please know this. Walking away is not failure. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. Choosing yourself is not selfishness. It is survival. It is wisdom. It is the bravest thing you will ever do. The truth always finds its way to the surface. Manipulators eventually trap themselves in their own lies, and the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the daughters who learn to expect nothing. We are often the strongest of all. Thank you for listening to Lauren's story today. If her journey touched your heart or reminded you of your own experiences, please subscribe to our channel so you never miss another story like this one. And I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to protect your peace? What gave you the strength to finally walk away? Your story might be exactly what another listener needs to hear today.